The Course in Miracles is really, you could call it a progressive path. It's a progressive path of awakening. It uses mind training, and it really helps you to remove the blocks first so that you begin to have a sufficient amount of light to come in so that you can understand what the Course is saying. It starts with requiring a little bit of willingness, and then it moves to requiring a lot of willingness. So this is a progressive path. It's amazing. It has such beautiful passages in it that not only help us to undo the errors or the things that we thought were true. It also has these beautiful characteristics of what we truly are and how we will experience the world with a different way of seeing, a different way of being in the world. And it really does bring you to the experience of Christ embodiment, Christ consciousness embodiment, where you're really walking the message of the truth, and you're starting to notice that you're not the same person that you were a few years ago when you first started looking into what the Course said, and then you become, all of a sudden you start realizing, oh my God, I really, things have really changed completely. My world has completely changed. Well, that's the progressive path, and I love it. And I also love the path that Arther is going to talk about today. It's the direct path. And the difference between the progressive path and the direct path is that the progressive path brings you along gradually. It uses a lot of Christian terminology that you eventually you let go of the Christian terminology as far as attaching yourself to a God, a Holy Spirit, a Jesus, a something that you think is outside of you. You eventually let go of all of those pronouns to know that you are the self. You are what God is. It's the progressive path. The direct path brings you to the experience of, am I aware of my experience in this moment? And it brings you, so as soon as you come back and answer that question just with your understanding or with moving the mind out of the way to answer that, am I aware of my experience? You come into the awareness of your experience, which is the self, which is the Christ, which is the awareness of love's presence. So you can find your identity in God in about 30 seconds with the direct path, and then you undo your errors from there. You practice forgiveness by resting in awareness and not judging any of your activities or your brothers from there. And it's a different way of getting to the same place. And Arther's going to talk about the direct path, the non-dual teaching, and I love the way he expresses it. He makes what I make sound complicated, he makes it sound simple. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Arther Gay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Arther Gay, and Bill, thank you for inviting me. Today's going to be a two-part topic or subject, and first I'm going to talk about thought, egoic thought, and this is a personal experience, manipulating my understanding and teaching so it could exist. And then I'm going to talk about that thought what it is, what it does. And of course, I'll never stay on topic because I never do. But as always with any presentation I do, when I talk about awareness, you can substitute consciousness, knowing, God, whatever works for you. So I'm just going to do a quick big picture. Awareness is infinite and whole. It doesn't have boundaries like this. This is just a representation. Awareness self-assumes, willingly assumes the finite mind, to manifest objective experience. This finite mind is an imaginary limitation of the whole, of the allness. This imaginary limitation is where the separate self gets developed. In the Course, this imaginary limitation is talked about as that one crazy thought we have when we think we're separate from God.
The tiny mad idea.
The tiny mad idea. I've had many tiny mad ideas. So, I kept having, I've been trying to figure out how to describe it, and I haven't come up with anything good, so I'm going to call it just a thought coming up on a regular basis. And it was really coming up a lot January, February. So in early March, I said, I'm done with just allowing this to rise and do its thing, because it keeps being the same thing over and over. I said, I'm going to take it, this thought, to experience, so experience can show me what the truth is. Because experience, when we eliminate judgment, which is just thought, always shows me the truth. So this thought that kept popping out kept telling me that I could come from awareness back into experience while being aware, but I could be a kind of gentler version of this, what I used to be. And it kept showing up. So it was about an 11 or 12-day experiment in early March. The second or third day when it was done, a lot was revealed. And one thing was revealed, that I had this deep-seated desire to be a casual drinker. It had taken root in my physical. A desire, a belief can do the same thing. It can take root. An emotion can do the same thing, where it digs deep down because I buried it my whole life. So it kept telling me I could come back as a gentle, casual drinker, being aware. For you AAs, put on your seatbelts, because this may rock you a little bit, okay? I will say that the belief in addiction is just a belief that I'm a physical body, because the only thing that can be addicted is a physical body. So I want to share a little, where am I? Page 3. This is The Ease of Being by Klein. And when I made the decision to take this experiment into experience to see the truth, I had to take it in and leave it alone and allow it to do whatever it was going to do, even if it killed the physical body. Because I knew I was going in places that I've never been able to go before. So at the same time, I was doing a little reading with Klein. And he talks about this deep-rooted desire. And the student said, at times, there is something in me that doesn't want to give up a certain choice. In me, it's this deep desire. I didn't even understand it, that it was stuck in me like it was. So Klein says, but if the choice is very deep, do it, undertake it, follow it. Don't refuse it, just be aware while doing it. So the student asks, are you saying that when one does not contradict the ego, it eventually disappears? Klein says, of course, but accepting is very important. Accept your actions, your wishes, and desires. Acceptance puts you in a position of intelligence, of spontaneity, wherein the universe is set free. Everything previously restricted by your conceptions regains its natural expression. Only then is real understanding possible. since conclusions appear in you which have nothing to do with the customary process of memory. The separate self is just memory. So I'm going to briefly talk about the experiment itself. Being aware, I approached this experiment, and the first 2 days, I had a couple of drinks, and that was it. And the third day, I didn't drink. Now, I want to stress that the activity of the experiment is completely unimportant, okay? But this is what I did. So the third day, I didn't drink. The fourth day, I did the same thing. I had a couple of drinks, being aware. For about the next 3 days, I went into heavy drinking. I completely got absorbed in the activity of the separate self. Being aware was long gone. I was completely veiled from the truth because my attention was focused on this activity of the next drink. The separate self isn't a being, it's an activity. So then I had a day where I didn't drink again. And then I went into 2 more days of heavy drinking. This period of the heavy drinking and the day not drinking was completely veiled. I was lost. I was so stuck in here. I was stuck in my old self, in my memory. Then the last 2 days of the experiment, what I call amazing happened. I lost all interest in having the drinking, and those last 2 days it waned to nothing. What happened was awareness presented itself with no doing by me. I've had so many tastes of truth. Awareness, me, tasting my awareness, myself. Turning this imaginary mind away from this to awareness, tasting myself. That awareness wouldn't let me stay here. And then I was being aware of it. And the experiment ended. I want to do a little reading from Rupert, Spira, being aware, about awareness, not allowing me to stay there. Once this recognition, this tasting of awareness has taken place, it is never possible to invest our desire for lasting peace and happiness in objective experience with quite the same conviction again. See, I had invested my attention in objective experience of separate self. Although we may forget or ignore it, and as a result repeatedly return to objective experience, seeking fulfillment, our understanding will impress itself upon us with greater frequency and power, asserting its undeniable and unavoidable truth with ever-increasing clarity, demanding to be heard. We turn away from this intuition at our own peril. When objective experience, including any conventional religious or spiritual practices that involve directing attention towards some more or less subtle object, such as an external God, a teacher, a mantra, or a breath, has been exhausted as a possible means by which peace and happiness may be obtained, only one possibility remains: to turn the mind around upon itself and investigate its essential nature. So, I'm going to say the third morning after the experiment was done. I was just being stillness all morning. I just rested in stillness. I was doing a little reading on what I read you from John Klein, the first one. And things got revealed. And just a note on the experiment itself, it took a physical toll on the body I used. The body was completely exhausted. Felt 100 years old. So in this morning, and it went into the afternoon, but I had gone back into experience and wasn't resting in stillness. This exhaustion started to lift in the morning, and it was completely gone by the end of the afternoon. It was amazing. But one thing was revealed, that I had this deep desire, this rooted desire to be a casual drinker, happy-go-lucky, inexperienced. And it wanted to come up and be looked at. That's why it kept showing up. Is it completely unrooted? I don't know. Who knows what's going to show up next in experience? But I'll tell you that that morning, awareness expanded. And it's the only way I can describe it. And it hasn't stopped expanding since then. We can tend to put our attention, say, on a movie and get lost in the movie. And when the movie's over, we may be aware again. That's not happening anymore. Awareness is present through these things that used to keep my attention, a baseball game. The biggest revealing was that this activity of the next drink, the separate self, doesn't exist. It's never existed. It's a thought. I have a thought that I can be a casual drinker. That dissolves, and then another thought comes up and says, that's me. And that thought dissolves, and another thought comes up and says, I can do that. That's all it is. It's a thought that I latch onto, and if I do it enough times, it becomes a belief. This does not exist. This is what we call the imaginary limitation of our wholeness. Lisa?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just have two questions for you. If you can give us a little bit of background, because I thought you were sober for a long time. So maybe if you could just tell us what happened, like where you made a decision to decide to be a casual drinker. And maybe I'm wrong, but I thought you were a long time sober. And then the second question I have for you is, what you said on the third day of your experiment, you had a couple of drinks in awareness. I would love to hear what the awareness was while you were having the couple of drinks. Because then you said in the next day you went into heavy drinking. So I'm just curious your experience with whatever that was.
Being aware of of the experiment, I was a witness to it. I was allowing it to unfold. I wasn't in it. I was witnessing it. I was knowing my experience. Experience if I ask you, are you aware of this experience we're having right now? What would you say?
Now that you ask.
Would you?
I would say yes.
Okay. If I ask you, are you putting any effort into being aware of the experience? What would you say?
No.
No. That's called effortless knowing. We just know knowing. This effortless knowing is awareness. It's who we are. So, being aware of the experiment, I was in effortless knowing. I was witnessing. Memory, my past, I've been sober double-digit years, many times 5 years. I was a binge drinker, what they call. I would drink for 2 weeks, a month, wind up in detox, because physically I couldn't drink longer, because it would kill me. So, but to say I've been sober for a certain amount of time comes from the point of view of the finite mind. There's only aware presence. There's only presence. If I pick up a drink now or don't, it's just now. It's always brand new. Experience is whole and seamless and new all the time. It's when I come from this point of view that I say this has happened before, or this is who I am. It's memory. I didn't spend a lot of time in recovery programs. 2 different times I went through them. I would say they're a beautiful, progressive path, like Bill was describing in the course, to understand what we're not. Because to understand who I am, first I have to know what I'm not. Does that answer your question?
I'm just not sure. The experiment element of it, like wanting to take it to the limit, to really just to recognize that you were having this experience and this separate limited self was still there wanting casual drink. So I'm just not sure like what that moment of decision was. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think. Like,
Okay.
I haven't drank in a very long time.
Right. So normally that moment of decision was a choice I made because I wanted to drink.
Okay.
All the times I picked up. The 30 times over my life that I went to detox and was not drinking and then picked up. This time the choice didn't come from here. It wasn't a choice because I wanted to drink. It was a choice that I wanted to take it to experience to really see what the truth is. And part of that is because I do know some who would, in the past, would call themselves addicts, alcoholics, who now have an occasional drink. Diedrich is one of them. And he runs recovery programs. So that thought was present also. And I'm sure somewhere in the background, this guy was saying, yeah, I want to drink. I didn't experience that, but I would be surprised if that wasn't in the background. But I want to stress that this experiment is not about drinking. It could have been any activity of the separate self. But for me, that's what it was. I want to stress this isn't about recovery in AA. I knew this was going to happen.
Okay, so I have the experience of being in the 12-step program for many years. So as you explain, I mean, I know my identity is a child of God, that I'm spirit. And within me, and my thoughts are always like, I am not my body. I am spirit, even when I get a sensation in my body. But I would never, from what I heard you say is you wanted to experience that feeling of picking up a drink. But my thought is that was an experience in my lifetime already. I don't have to go back there to experience the pain and that I got from that experience. I don't have to go back there. I know what that's like. So for me to even contemplate that thought, I just disregard it. The same thing I do with the sensation in my body.
So that's perfect.
Okay, so I understand what you did. You wanted to experience that experience again.
I wanted the experience to define the thought to me. Truth, not truth. It needed to be exposed. I had to do this. I had no option with this. It needed to be exposed for what it was. It was a deep-seated desire that if I don't allow it to come up and go, it's gonna have its effect throughout my experience with this physical body. This is how it presented itself to me.
Now I understand what you mean. I don't have that within me. I don't feel that within
Right.
that thought.
But it could be something else, a belief, a deep-seated belief. Hold on, Nancy.
Okay.
This is how it presented for me personally.
I see.
Okay?
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
I know that if I have a commitment to keeping a belief or thought at bay, to resist it or deny it so it doesn't physically harm me like addiction, I'm committing to my pain and suffering.
That thought is
It's the resistance to the thought, feeling, or emotion that's going to cause my pain and suffering. I have to allow it to come up. I have to welcome it. I have to love it. I probably didn't have to do this experiment, but I did. I can't tell you why. I had to do it. I don't know if it's so deep-seated that maybe that just took the cover off the desire and it's going to show up again in another way. I don't know.
I honor your thought system. I think, you know, for you, if you had to do that, that's perfect for you. It just is not in my awareness.
No, you don't. Look at the
Yeah,
disclaimer
I have to
to
say that out loud.
the disclaimer
Yeah.
to the experiment is, and this is the truth, it was done by a professional. A professional who knows how to binge drink. Okay? Don't try this at home.
No.
Don't call me up and say you went drinking because of this presentation. You're wasting your time with me. I don't want to hear it. This isn't about drinking. Shirley comes from the same place I do. So that recovery background starts kicking in. Because I think having a drink is more important than eating food or chasing a woman or gambling. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. To make it more important is a judgment. I attach to it. But for me in AA, the biggest one is having a drink. Oh, you can't do that. You can do the other stuff, but you can't have the drink. It's all the same. But this is how it presented to me.
As Nancy says, I say the way I don't pussyfoot, I say what I think, okay? I think this is dangerous, not for what you did. I think this is very dangerous to be doing for these, however, 500 people that might be watching. Because, and I've known people here that have listened to you that's in 12-step when you've said something like this, and they've walked out and got really upset about what's going on. Now, I'm an addict, but it's from food. I don't do alcohol and I haven't done drugs. So that's not my issue. But you've done a lot of work, and you're talking from a person that meditates and is quiet, and you're already centered. So for you to do this experiment, it might be perfectly okay. I'm not being judging on what you're doing. For people listening here that maybe are 6 months into AA or are doing drugs, and you're telling them, well, yes, I feel like I need to do this. And they're going to listen to you, and they're going to think they can go out and do it, and they're not safe to do it. They're not at a place that it's okay for them to do it because they're new.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. So what you're saying out here, you had to do it. That's the same way an alcoholic or an addict, all these people that are dying today feel, I don't have a choice, I have to do it.
Okay, let me stop you because I understand what you're saying.
Right. It feels
Okay.
like it's a wrong.
We're going to take me and my presentation out of this for a moment.
I love that this is being shared in this
Yeah,
way.
I knew this was gonna
This
come up.
energy is awesome.
I loved it too. Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
I
Thank you
knew
for
this
that.
was going to come up, Maggie. So take me and the presentation out
That's right.
just for a moment. What is your thought about this? Even though I'm not hearing this, you're just having a thought about it. What is your thought?
The mic can hear.
That for people listening to this,
Okay, let's back it up. Not the people. What is your actual thought?
that it's not a safe practice.
Okay, back up one more. What is your actual thought?
It's just like, I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
you're struggling with backing up one more.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm trying to get you to say it. Your thought is a judgment.
And I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, that's cool. But It can be a good judgment or a bad judgment. But all judgment comes within dualism, within the mind. Okay? What I'm presenting here is a non-dualism, our reality. We are God. We are awareness. We're not this. This is just a portal that awareness uses to experience itself in objective experience. What I call a finite mind is just an individual mind, an expression of awareness experiencing itself. God knows itself through itself. Your thoughts coming from in here. This isn't good. It may affect someone else. There is no other. There's only us. This is an experiment, a truth, that you could flip your opinion on and say, I don't have to do the experiment now because Arthur did it for me and I'll have the same results.
But she said you might go back.
And what's that have to do with this?
It has everything to do with it.
It's a choice that she makes from her finite mind.
To me, like, so you said you had this experience. Thank you, Shirley and Maggie, for what you shared. This is dangerous territory you're going into because there are a lot of people online that are at the very beginning of transformation. And there is a responsibility of those that are teaching to hold the truth. And so you gave a great, just out of your own words, that you felt like you were 100 years old. You had the experience that you were 100 years old, and then you still decided to drink the next day. So you were coming from the duality then. You couldn't have coming. So my favorite story is Bill's story, because he decided he went for 25 years not drinking because he lived in a Christian belief system that's bad. He wanted to be a good Christian. So when he found A Course in Miracles, he actually went into an experiment of sorts, without calling it an experiment, where he decided, oh, I guess I can drink now. I'm free. So he started drinking.
Similar experiment.
He started drinking wine. He started to be aware that his drinking was going from the bar, ordering glasses of wine in the bar, to wanting to drink more. So he's buying bottles now and bringing them home so he can drink more. So he's in awareness. And then one day, and this is the grace of God, he heard a voice when he opened the fridge that said, you can't hear me when you drink that. He never picked up a drink ever again. Like that's, and I have Shirley's experience. Like, I know the effects of drinking. I will never pick up a drink ever again, and I'm not an alcoholic anymore. Like, I totally agree with that part of taking off the label. But in those early days, I needed rules. Don't pick up a drink.
And that's why you go to AA.
I don't go to AA anymore, but I'm so grateful.
Back then, when we do.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that it exists.
We need that formation within duality, because I would never have any understanding if I was still drinking. I just never would have got to the point to start exploring it. What we're doing here is we're making the content of the experiment more important than the teaching.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
Can I go on? I'm already 20 past it. I got some stuff to do.
Yeah, I love where this is going, and I love just watching all of this experience. This is really good stuff. And there's a charge on it. There's a charge on the content of what's being spoken. And I love that too. So this is your presentation. We'll let you continue.
I want to take it further. It may help explain. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
There was like online stuff.
I'm sure.
And what I'd asked Bill to represent.
Let's let him keep going, and then when he's ready for more questions.
I just want to breeze through this part and then,
We'll lose a lot of it by then because there's a lot of commenting going on. And,
I could picture this going a lot further than a presentation.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, from the finite mind, the separate self. And I face objective experience. Most or all relationships are two, subject-object, dualism. If you ask a sage, Jesus, Rupert, Spira, what they see when they look into experience, they'll say, I see the same thing you do. But when I look in from the point of the finite mind, the subject, the separate inside self, and I see not me. I see others. I see the world. I see the universe. There's a me, the knower, and the other, the known. Dualism. When a sage looks out, he knows that the objects aren't separate. That's the illusionary part of experience. He knows that anything within experience that is rising up is awareness taking shape and form to know itself. The beauty of nature is just our self-awareness expressing itself to know itself. God knows itself through itself. Awareness knows itself through itself. So, when I'm looking at experience from the finite mind's point of view, I'm the subject, I'm me. And I take my attention, my thought, and I see Bill Free, the other. He's the object. The difficulty in the subject-object, or the connecting, is the thought. This is where my problem lies, in the connecting thought. This thought is attention being stretched out. In this attention is created. It's like a clenched fist, this tension. And I seemingly live my whole life right here in this tension. This tension is normal. It's all I've ever experienced. All this tension wants to do, all desire, my desire to be a casual drinker, the desire to have a better job, a new wife, a bigger house. All desire is one desire, for this tension to relax back into its natural self, its natural form. That's all it is. I want to just do a quick... This is from Rupert's Being Aware of Being Aware Again. The apparently separate self or ego is like a rubber ball that is being squeezed. All there is to the squeezed ball is the original ball. However, squeezing the ball shrinks it and sets up a tension that is always seeking to expand to its original relaxed condition. This finite mind, all it wants to do, the only desire it has, is to lose its finiteness, to be pure awareness, pure God. The squeeze ball does nothing. It is the naturally relaxed state of the fully expanded ball that draws a contracted ball back to its original condition. So we, as a separate mind or a finite mind, don't discover awareness and go back to it. Awareness absorbs us, the finite mind, back into itself. So when we're standing here looking into experience from the subject point of view, and I ask myself, or I ask someone, are you aware? Or who are you? Or what is the source of your thought? The mind turns around and stops looking at objective experience, takes its attention off this, and puts it on awareness. But what it does is it bangs into this limitation. And as it bangs into it enough times, it starts to relax. It starts to relax into awareness. So, this thought that connects the subject-object. And this whole presentation is about the thought that kept approaching me about being a casual drinker. I could have left out the experiment and done the same teaching. And if it was irresponsible, there was no intention. So what we do is this thought, mind, ego, we just allow to relax into the heart of awareness. We do it, for me, my personal experience has started with objective meditation, where I was trying to quiet the mind. And eventually, when we reach a point that it becomes non-objective meditation, that's going to turn into living meditation. We start allowing the mind to relax into the heart of awareness. As we do this, awareness goes from the background of all experience, where we're looking this way and awareness is in the background, that the experience, the objects of experience, start taking a back seat and awareness comes forward. We taste our true being. So this process here of allowing the mind to relax into the heart of awareness is the process of being aware. And when I'm in the process, or when I'm being aware, I'm aware of my true being. The more time I spend outside of this imaginary limitation, the more awareness expands. The truth, God, reveals itself. My attention gets pulled back into objective experience, as that experiment shows. But it doesn't stay there as long. It doesn't affect me as much. When I recognize that I'm pulled back into objective experience, I allow whatever's going on to just go on. I drop my judgment of it. I drop my thought about it. I just let it be. See, there's egoic thinking, which is that compulsive thinking that we live most of our lives with, and there's thinking that comes from awareness, practical thinking. Once we start spending time in this effortless knowing, we bring it back into experience, we bring that peace with us. Awareness responds how we expect it to respond. So when we're coming from this peace, awareness responds as beauty and love. When I'm coming from the separate self, and I may have a chaotic mind, that's what's going to respond in objective experience. The more time we spend here, the less our attention is stuck on the objects of experience, the me and the not me. As this thought starts to rest into the heart of awareness, it takes the subject with it. And the object can't exist without a subject. It's dualistic. It's like fat and skinny, high and low, red and whatever. Everything in dualism has an opposite.
I'm going to come and answer some of the questions,
Sure.
ask you some of the questions for the live streamers.
Yeah.
And before I do, I just want to bring attention to everyone that's watching. Does anyone have any judgment on this experiment? Anyone in here have any judgment on it? No judgment other than Maggie?
That's okay.
That's cool.
It's okay to have a
And
judgment.
if you do have judgment on it, that's awesome. Just notice it. Lisa has her hand up.
Well, it's not, to me, it's not judgment. It's that you
Oh,
say.
okay. I'm just had the question. It's a yes or no answer.
Well, he called it judgment, so so he said I was being judgmental, so that's why I said yes.
Okay, so
He
the,
says I may have a
the,
chaotic.
the idea,
The live streamers can't hear any of these.
the idea that I just want to bring attention, if there's any judgment, there's no judgment in that question. And I will say that for me, I don't need to do his experiment to have my own experience. I will say, don't do this at home. Don't try Arthur's experiment, because he said he got lost in this place. He may have died in this experiment. So it's very possible that he could have had this experiment and not returned in a physical body as the guy that's going to sit up here and make a presentation. So that's a possibility that may have happened. But I really like the idea that we're an open community that is, and we got this guy, he did a crazy friggin' experiment, and he's up here talking about it. He's an authentic teacher of God, and I love I love your courage.
Can I just,
Thank you.
if I was sitting in an AA meeting, I would give this experiment to the whole group and say, this is what I did. Don't do it. That's what would be presented and it's the same thing here. It's the same presentation here as you'd hear if we were sitting in a recovery meeting.
So we have a few questions online. Where do we need to start here?
Oh, they were long ago.
Oh, long ago.
But read what Morris had to say.
Okay, Morris says this is applicable to so many things, such as anger. Anger is my drug. If I head down the road of anger, I could totally binge anger. LOL. That would go on until I was completely exhausted from anger. My body would pay for all the anger I expelled at others, like I was 100 years old. Arthur and I have spoken personally on this, and his teaching has been very helpful to me for several weeks on this matter. Thank you, Morris. I love the way you express that. And Jane Roth says, I am enjoying the discussion. I am addicted to fear. I'm not laughing at you, Jane. I am addicted to fear. I am terrified of being in a state of fear. So because of that terror to it, it is an addiction because I always am working to keep safety as a priority of mine. Thank you, Jane.
And in that practice of trying to keep fear away, we energize fear, we strengthen it.
Yes,
And
yes.
fear, a drink, anger, it's all the same thing. It starts as one thought.
I don't, it says, wait a minute, it says, Bill, please ask Arthur if he feels the desire to drink is finished.
I'm going to answer it this way. All thought has lost its power right now. We don't know what experience is going to flow through, what experience is going to bring. All thought.
Will you ever do heroin?
Wait,
Will you repeat that?
yeah.
All thought.
No, will you repeat what she asked?
What did you ask, Lisa?
Will you do heroin again sometime?
I don't understand.
Lisa
this question.
said, would you do heroin?
It's just a yes or no question. Will you drink again?
I can't know. I'm not living in that. That's a futuristic question. It's not present. That's the ego saying what's going to happen next week.
Right.
That question.
That's true. There's a.
I don't have an
let me
answer
get
to
another relevant question from the board here. Arthur, would you say your mind is still being trained?
Trained?
Trained.
I've never. The residue that's still left behind, even though I spend most of my time in effortless knowing, there's a residue left behind of this. This has been a lifetime experience. it's still washing out. And that's what that experiment was, a washing out of this residue. It just happened that the activity was drinking, and that's what's upsetting everybody.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Do we still have Lisa's hand, or is it finished? And wait a
I
minute.
just want to say something real quick while you're back here. This is Bonnie. I just want to say, Arthur, I am happy that you're doing this. And I understand the dangerousness of it all. But when we have teachings like this, and there's so much energy around it, that in itself is a greater teaching, and you're sitting up there handling it all well, and it is well received too.
That was awesome, Bonnie.
I would say,
Well said, Bonnie. Kimball.
I would say if you're struggling with this, the experiment part of the presentation, turn inward and explore who is struggling. Okay, Lisa.
I just love you so much. And this is like the most perfect demonstration as a class for everyone. So when Bill asked, do I have a judgment? It's not a judgment, but your language is revealing where you are, and you're going in and out. So it's good that you just answered that question honestly when somebody said, are you still being trained? So you're aware that there's still an Arthur there, a self-identity. So you said things like, I may have a chaotic mind. I may pick up a drink again. So the question in awareness is always, who's the I? The truth of you does not have a chaotic mind.
It has
The
no
truth of
mind.
you doesn't pick up a drink.
Correct.
The truth of you is eternal, is changeless, is pure light. So what's happening here in my mind, and I'm so grateful because you are being very bold, standing in front of us, describing what you're doing and being totally authentic and exposing yourself and naked before us. So to me, it's just, I would suggest you go back and watch the video again and watch the language.
I can't watch myself. Look, for most of us, especially early on in the understanding of awareness, we do this. We go to the finite mind, we go to awareness. We go to the finite mind, we go to awareness. Once this is established, this residue still needs to be released. This experiment was part of my personal releasing.
But you can release it right now.
In truth, there's nothing to release. It's a thought or belief of this. But it gets deep-seated in our physical. We have to allow it to come up. I could have sat with this forever until it was done coming up. I felt I was speeding up the process, to be honest with you. And I didn't care about the results. I didn't care about this. Like, again, I say it was done by a professional. Don't do this at home.
So what's interesting is I do work letters, right? SS is like Social Security, So like there's a security, and all mind is based on the past, right? Like we have these thoughts. We have a past, and our thoughts come from the past. And security is when we want to recreate the past so that we can feel safe because we have had that past. So you wanted to feel safe. You wanted to see, that was me and I'm safe. So, sometimes, with me, I didn't make a choice. My son, even today, he didn't go to school 4 days out of the week. And he's failing. And so I have to deal with my issue of failing.
So let's have the
Yeah.
question. Let's have the question for Arthur.
I don't need the mic.
Let's just have a question. Don't bring up your story.
Right.
What's the question about what he's talking about? You have a question? Okay.
Look, in the infinite awareness, none of this even exists. It only comes from the point of view of the imaginary limitation. Once we've gotten outside the imaginary limitation on a regular basis, this starts to dissolve. The dissolving shows up in many ways: thoughts, feelings, emotions. We're putting too much importance on that word addiction. All objective experience from a personal point of view is an addiction. We're addicted to the belief that I'm a body. That's it. We're going into the finite and pulling out something and saying, addiction's more important than driving your car. They're all a thought. Having an ice cream cone. They're all a thought. So we're getting tangled up. The energy's coming because we think addiction's more important than something else. It's all imaginary. Comes from the finite mind, which is an imaginary limitation of God. God makes mind to manifest experience to know itself. And then it goes back through the same portal into pure God, pure awareness, who we are. And when it wants to experience itself again, it makes mind and manifests experience to know itself as objective experience. Awareness is completely open to all experience. It's completely defenseless against any experience. Because experience is made up of awareness. It appears within awareness. It is awareness. I'll do this quick. For something to appear outside of God means that God's not infinite. If God isn't infinite, by definition, God is finite. Anything finite comes and goes. Whatever God comes and goes in is greater than God. There's nothing outside of the infinite God. You are God. This is an imaginary thought. Andy.
We have two questions here. Go ahead.
I just have something I just want to say because you brought up addiction, drinking. I just want to say that since I started coming to class in 2015, March of 2015, so it makes it about 4 years, I've seen very brave people get up and speak their truth. You being one today that as soon as you started talking, I was just like, oh my God. Lisa has gotten up and said stuff. Bill's gotten up and said stuff. Sandy over here has spoke her truth, hard truth on all different subjects. And Kelly Russell. I could just go on and name every single teacher in here but I think because it's addiction, that it becomes a hot button issue. I mean, if I stood up there and said, well, my awareness, I did an experiment. I thought I'm just going to eat Boston cream donuts for the next week. I don't think you're going to get the reaction.
But it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So I just want to say that I honor everybody's truth to get up here, and it's courageous to do what you're doing, what Lisa's done, what Bill, what everybody does when they get up here.
Look at it. If
awesome.
You're frustrated by this, have a judgment about it, that's awesome.
I loved it.
Step back away from the judgment and just witness it. Allow it to be a judgment. Allow it to do what it wants. Calling it a judgment is just a thought. Allow it. Judge it all you want, but be the witness to it. Yeah. It's like if I say, I am depressed. If I can recognize that I am depressed, I've put some space between depression and the I. Because I'm recognizing it. It's not me, it's here. It's an object.
My question is this what caused the experiment to begin with?
Yes, the topic was...
The separated self.
Yes, the ego
what created
exactly.
the decision to cause the experiment.
It was manipulating my understanding, saying, you can come from awareness, be aware, but you can still be this, just a gentler kind of version. It was all ego. It was ego thought. And I'll tell you what's been exposed is that it was kind of a last stand for thought. It's been shown that this was a I'm going to live or die here. And that's why I say now, at this moment, thought has no power.
So your separated self wanted to prove to your separated self that you could overcome it. I mean, I'm
That's a good way. You can put it that way. But I would put it this way. The separate self just wanted to exist, and it thought it could exist through this approach. You're understanding, but you can be your old self, just gentler. Same thing.
Thank you.
We have time for one more. You have a question?
I just feel that isn't in the process of this journey, we're all doing experiments. This is what we do. We experiment all the time with this.
Yeah.
I feel like I was just experimenting with it with fear thoughts, and things showed up, and it's like, so I stepped back from it and I observed it, like depression or sadness, and played with it a little bit, and fear came up. Well, okay, am I going to be depressed now? And no, I'm not. And so I just feel like it's part of the growth of what we're doing here.
It is, totally is.
So.
Can I leave with my favorite one-liner?
We out of time? Yeah, we're out
One
of time.
line.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we leave thoughts and feelings alone, they leave us alone.
That was awesome. Thank you, live streamers. That was like a high energy subject. Thank you, Arthur. Wow, you pulled that one right out of the hat. Let's everyone rise and we'll have a closing prayer. And I just appreciate, this was such a good presentation, and the topic was highly charged. Amazing. It's, the reason it was so highly charged is because you're AA. You come from an AA background, and a lot of the guys that are on the spiritual path, they also have that. And when I did it, if I drank, man, I'm right down. I get lost in the drinking. So when I found the Course, I wanted the truth so much that I just wasn't willing for anything to come in the way of the truth.